Hey there, community. How are you today? Welcome to this episode of You Want Answers. This is the first episode we've had since the beginning of January. That was, kicked off the new year with an episode of You Want Answers, and now we're back here. Last month we did a show with the Shape team. We got to invite them in, and so gave up my solo slot so that we could bring that exciting show to you. But now we're back, and so. Today, we're going to get into some certification scenarios, as well as dig into the DevCentral Q&A forums and look at some things that I found interesting or might want to just provide some color commentary on. And real quick, before we get into that, I would like to promote Agility. It's coming up here April 20th through the 22nd. And that is, as it says on the slide there, free 3-day digital event. So we'll have breakouts and labs and, all the, actually, I don't know if we'll have labs. I'll need to check that. Definitely we'll have the breakouts and keynotes. And John and I will be bringing you Cup of Joe, which is the live stream aspect of Agility during the days around the lunch hour. So it'll be a good time. And I know there's lab components to Agility. I just don't know. Last year, they were like 2 separate weeks. And I haven't seen the details here to see if labs are part of the 3-day Agility or if that's going to be separate again this year. So should have clarified that before I promoted it. But nonetheless, Agility, April 20th through 22nd. Join us for that. And now, the other things I wanted to promote before we get moving is next week, we are going to have Cindy Borvik and Lori McVitie, and we're going to talk about the state of application strategy. And that report dropped yesterday. If you haven't gotten your copy, get out to f5.com, download your report. Lots of great industry nuggets on where the industry is going and what we need to do about it and the strategy behind that. And then John will be back March 18th for another episode of Security Sidebar. March 25th, we're bringing Brian McHenry and Corey Marshall, who have both come to the show before. And we're going to talk about zero trust. And that'll close out the quarter. Again, like kicking off April, we've got some good stuff coming. Tyler Hatton's going to come back and join us from Worldwide Technologies to do another lab day. So we got some exciting stuff there as well. All right, so let's. You'll have to bear with me today. I've got new equipment, and I thought I had everything set up properly, but where my monitors are and where I can actually see, I'm missing a cable that prevented some things. And so bear with me today. I'm not actually in the studio that John and I normally shoot from. We're not going to have that space anymore. And so I'll be streaming from home. He'll be streaming from home. And so I've got a new setup in my home office, and I'm not quite there yet. So bear with me, but we'll get this stuff figured out. All right. Let's get on to what you're here for. And that is not, well, hold on. All right. That is, we're going to start with the certification. And so these aren't necessarily certification or retired certification questions, but we are going to start focusing on, instead of taking a look at a retired question, we're just going to start taking a look at blueprint objectives. And then kind of thinking about topics around those objectives. And so the first thing we're going to cover here is around exam objective 201, and that's determining the correct solution to mitigate a given threat. So we're going to focus on DDoS here in our time on the certification side today. And the question here would be around, what are the most common DDoS categories recognized industry-wide? You get to choose 3. All right. So if you have read on F5 labs, there are 3 that should jump out of you. Debbie's got a great article on that, and I'll share those resources in the description of the show at the end of the show. In fact, I've got a ton of resources for DDoS to share with you guys today. But so let me choose annotate screen here. All right. So the 3 that we're going to choose, the ones that we have here: asymmetric attacks, volumetric attacks, computational attacks, protocol attacks, vulnerability attacks, application layer attacks. We've got a lot of attacks here, all right? And the industry ones, and I'll just go ahead and circle these, are, oh, that is not what I meant to do. All right. The industry ones are the volumetric. Oh, I copied over that. Let me just choose a circle here. The volumetric attacks, the protocol attacks, and the application layer attacks. Those are your three. Now, you may be looking at a couple of other of these, and you've read a white paper on F5.com and said, wait a minute, I thought there were 4 categories. And so we do have a white paper where they're kind of looking at 4 categories, and those would be the computational attacks, the volumetric attacks, the vulnerability attacks, and asymmetric attacks. And so it's industry-wide, the 3 are volumetric, protocol, application layer. But, every vendor kind of looks at things a little bit differently. You might take a different slant, define things, categorize things a little bit more narrow or widespread. And so those are kind of the nuances when you're looking at documentation like that. And so we're going to go ahead and define all of these in the coming type questions. Oh, we got some comments. Let me do that before we move on. If I can get there. One of my new tools. Okay, there we go. Head grab the screen. Leaf, thank you. Confirmed labs will be a part of Agility on those same days. Thank you, Leaf. And that's good to know. And on Pasilva, Agility labs fill up fast. Make sure you mark your spot for Agility when registration opens next week. Yes, the labs are fantastic. They always are. Our sales, solution architects, and solution engineers do an amazing job building content for Agility, and then we're able to consume that after the fact in some capacity. You might have to build it yourself, but the documentation of that is usually available. But if you want the expertise of those who wrote the labs to be there with you to go through them, highly suggest you sign up for this and get in there, and it'll be you will not be sorry that you did. Thanks, guys, for helping me out and bailing me out there. All right, so here we've got the industry side, volumetric attacks, protocol attacks, application layer attacks, and they're all measured a little bit differently. Volumetric is in gigabits per second. Protocol attacks are also known as computational attacks. Again, on the F5 white paper where it goes into the 4 categories, it does define the protocol attack as at least labels it as the computational attack instead of protocol attack. And then it labels the application layer attack as a vulnerability-based attack. So if you are studying for a 401 and this question happens to be on there, I think that given our talk with the psychometricians, something like that I think would probably be thrown out. But if it's there, hopefully they've clarified that, or at least seen in the statistical analysis after the fact that maybe that wasn't a great question, given that the conflict of how one defines it versus the other. All right, so we see all these attacks. Let's actually look at for the top 3. We won't go into all of them, but for the top 3, they're the industry-wide. What the heck are these? And so come over to my other monitor and advanced. Oh, there we go. All right, what is a volumetric DDoS attack? And these are going to be the 4 options on all 3 that we look at. And so by the time we get to the last attack type, you should be able to pick out the answer. An attempt to deny service by exploiting inherent or inadvertent behaviors of one or more protocols. Okay, if you were on our talk with Shape and we were talking about the well, I forgot exactly what we were talking about, but Dan was talking about, login page. And so an inherent part of a login page is you need to submit some login credentials, whether it's just a byte string or username and password or some kind of multi-factor. That's an inherent function of of the login page that somebody might take advantage of. The inadvertent behaviors are the ones that it was not designed to do that, and yet by maliciously or even inadvertently doing something that the system is not expected, you cause some kind of problem. And so that's a difference there between inherent and inadvertent. And an attempt to deny service by sending massive amounts of traffic to a targeted victim. Okay, massive amounts and volume, that sounds pretty close. An attempt to deny service by exploiting known application vulnerabilities. An attempt to deny service by reflecting good traffic, good in quotations, back toward victim networks. Okay, so that to me seems pretty obvious that we're talking about a volume. We're talking about something that fills a big space, and the only one that really jumps out at me there is massive amounts of traffic, and so that is the correct answer here. And you can do that usually, like via botnets or whatever, that an attacker will have some kind of a command and control system, and they will send the legions of bots that they have control over, and then they will just have them start generating traffic, and they can do that in small amounts from many machines, large amounts from fewer machines. You can kind of mix that, and if you control the botnet and you're paying for it, well, you got to make sure that whatever you're attacking is worth it. But usually it's you have compromised systems that you don't own, and you're not responsible for the compute. And then so really there's two victims here. There's the target victim, but then also the source victim who has has a compromised system. All right, a protocol attack. So we've read through these before. We can kind of rule out the massive amounts of traffic because we know that's a volumetric attack, and then application vulnerabilities. That's kind of higher in the stack. Protocol attacks are typically layer 3, layer 4, and so we can look at for that one makes the most sense that it's going to take advantage of the inherent or inadvertent behaviors of one or more protocols. So like if you're talking like a TCP or UDP flood there. That kind of thing. And all right, so an application layer DDoS attack. The remaining two that we have is an attempt to deny service by exploiting known application vulnerabilities, or an attempt to deny service by reflecting good traffic back towards victim networks. And so we have a 50-50 chance here. I'm going to go with the application vulnerability since we're talking about the application layer. And sure enough, that's the right answer here. And of course, that last one, we're not talking about them, but that would be an example of an asymmetric attack. And that is kind of a subset of a volumetric attack. You think about the DNS amplification attack, where you might send DNS requests for a good, like you're asking for something that's massive from wherever your victim target is. And so you may, a request for DNS is very, very small. So you can send lots of those. But if you're asking for, the kitchen sink and a bag of chips, then it's got to send an awful lot back. And so then you can, flood the system that way. All right. So the whole reason we bring up all of the definitions of attacks is because as you prepare for your 401, you want to know how you're mitigating all of that. And so understanding the attacks and then understanding how to mitigate those attacks. And so the components of a DDoS protection architecture, and I'll share the links here. I like chips too, AirWriter. And I don't know, what are your favorite chips out there? AirWriter 23, I like chips. Yes, my favorite right now. My wife ordered some chips on Amazon, and they had a whole bunch of it, like a sweet Maui onion potato chip, and that's probably my favorite right now. Although I have a soft spot for the garden salsa sun chips as well. But back to our components of a DDoS protection architecture here. If you're looking at volumetric attacks, you're looking at some kind of a scrubbing service. Whether that's a like Silverline from us, where you can scrub all that traffic as it comes through a cloud-based infrastructure and then onto your destination servers, or in a distributed anycast model. You can use IP reputation databases like IPI. black hole. So if you have your ISPs, if you know that you're being attacked from particular subnets out there, you can black hole those with usually with route meds on your BGP stream, and you can just start advertising those routes to be black holed, and that'll happen automatically. Sometimes you have to work with your ISP, and they'll black hole that stuff for you. And then flow spec there. Protocol attacks, application delivery controller. You can use various timeouts and settings in your profiles on LTM that will allow you to help with that. The network firewall. So if you have AFM, lots of DDoS vectors that you can do in software if you only have virtual edition, but a lot of stuff down in the hardware if you have our hardware. And then of course, web application firewall can do some things at layer 4, some protocols, maybe in that are multi-layer protocols, maybe something in the session layer can function there. And then of course, application layer attacks, application delivery controller, again, maybe it's like an HTTP protocol or protocol, SIP protocol that you're going to be able to tune and tweak. Maybe you don't want to have a certain number of headers or the size of headers or anything like that. And then IDS isn't really a prevention because it's really just alerting you that it's there, but the IPS function there would be protective. And then IP reputation database. And so those are kind of the components of an architecture. And again, probably multi-layered here because you need some local protection in your data centers or even local protection in your cloud deployments, whether it's a Google Compute or Amazon or Azure. You're going to need that local protection component. But then also, for something like volumetric, if it's hundreds of gigabytes of traffic, your end is going to be so flooded that there's nothing you can do on the local side is going to help with that. And that's where a service like Silverline will shine and help you out. And before we go on, we got some entrants here. Dom's Ruffles cheddar, yes. I like cheddar, but it's like small quantities. I can have a few, and then it's like, no, I think I'd rather just have a regular potato chip and dip it in like a fondue cheese sauce or something. And then Daniel Wolf discovered mustard flavored chips in the UK. Yeah, I'm not a mustard guy. I do not do the mustard, but more power to you, Daniel Wolf. All right. So we're moving on to Q&A. And if you have any questions about DDoS attacks or comments, if you have any DDoS questions about the services and stuff that we provide, again, I'm going to dump a whole lot of resources in the description to this video when the show's over. But we have no shortage of opportunities to prevent or at least block. Well, I guess not prevent, but block cloud-based or local-based solutions. So check those resources out when we get to the end of the show. And of course, my good buddies Peter Silva and John Wagnon have a bunch of light boards on DDoS and different DDoS attacks. The F5 Labs team has a lot of documentation in their excellent articles on DDoS, and John has real attack stories where he kind of breaks down an attack that happened and what we did as an organization to prevent that. All right, so Q&A. First one here, stumped by regular expressions. This is a question that was asked by Richard Grigsby, and the requirement is he wanted to build a health check to send an API URI call to server and parse the return value for key indicators. So the expected return, he sends a call. The expected return from that's a big JSON blob. You can go out and check out the question. It was a big. It was probably 30, 40 lines of JSON, and it wasn't. He was looking for a particular single string. He had 3 strings that he wanted to look for, and status green from all 3 of those key values. And so his thought there was, well, I could do a regex for that. And always when I hear regex, my first thought is that's usually from an iRules perspective, because if you're writing iRules, regex is terribly expensive on the wire traffic. But in a health monitor, maybe a little less so, but you're still asking that question to the server, by default every 5 seconds. And if the regex takes time to crunch and all that, you might get into a race condition where your monitor is not even quite done processing what it needs to process before the next one kicks off. And granted, that'd have to be a ridiculously challenging regex to do that. And I don't think this is the case, but Simon Blakely, community answer for that, he started with the first of the 3. He's like, hey, here's some love. I'll give you a start. And he suggested regex101.com, which is where you can go put in strings and then test your regex, and it'll show you visually whether you're matching or not. It's a pretty helpful thing. My thought on that is, a regular monitor is meant to be a pretty simple pretty simple response that you're going to parse and look at. And it might be helpful to use an external monitor where you have a little bit more programmability to handle that response data. And so if I'm looking at that, I might take something like Python or Bash or Perl and write one of those scripts to be the monitor. And Bash is really fast, Perl's really fast. From a monitor perspective, I think I saw that even Python is like 0.084 seconds to run a script, so pretty fast. About 80 milliseconds, even on the Python side, is a little longer, a little fast, or a little slower. Actually, probably 4 times slower than Python or than Perl and Bash. But Python's what I like, and if it's not causing any problems, it's probably what I'd go with. And the gist of a monitor is you want it to be up or some other string, but you're looking for up. And so in this case, he's looking for these statuses. Well, with Python, it's super easy to interrogate JSON. A JSON string, normally it just shows up as a dictionary native in Python. And so, I could iterate through that and look at, X Elasticsearch status and pull that value right out. So I'm doing an AND condition across all 3 of those keys. Super simple. There's a template, and I've got it linked there for the external monitor. One of our MVPs, Leonardo Souza, put out some external monitor templates for you if you want to go out there to the code share and grab those. But that's how I would handle it. I would take a template, and then I'd put my logic in for the response data that I'm getting here, which I have there in the blue box, and that's probably the approach that I would take for that one. Okay, next. Need help with insert true client IP to X-forwarded for rule on LTM. This was a question, an iRule question asked by Prasad for you. And what he wanted to do was swap the Cloudflare IP with the true IP in the X-forwarded for header. What happens is, if you go through many intermediaries and proxies, it's possible that you end up with, maybe the closest to you IP in the X-forwarded for header, or you end up with multiple IPs in the X-forwarded for header. And what he wanted is the actual true IP. And so in this case, if the true client IP header is there, he wants to go ahead and swap it for the X-forwarded for value. In and of itself, that's a pretty simple thing. The iRule is not complicated, and there's I didn't put it in here, so I apologize to the author of the answer here. And the answer is very, very close. The reason I bring this up is you always want to go check your syntax. 2 things. Prasad, for you, always check your syntax before you apply anything, especially in production, because he said in the notes here, hey, I applied this and traffic stopped working. Well, that's bad. And I haven't seen his log files, but I know just by looking at this iRule that it's probably stopped working because there was tickle error on those requests, because the syntax is HTTP header exists with an S, not just exist. And so that's why I wanted to bring this one up. There's nothing super awesome or interesting about the iRule itself. It's pretty easy use case, but always check your syntax and always validate in a lab environment before you put stuff into production. All right, next one here is customize HTTPS port with SSL pass-through. And the requirement here is SSL pass-through even if the port is not 443. And Boneyard provided the answer he looked for. He was happy with that. But what I wanted to say here is that the big IP really doesn't care what port SSL is on or what port it's not on. It doesn't really care if it passes SSL through the box or offloads it. It can do all of those things. And so it really is just business requirement. What do you want to do with the traffic? And so, if you want to offload SSL at port 9999, more power to you. But in order to offload, you have to have a client SSL profile. And if you want to re-encrypt and send it to the backend in an encrypted session, you need a server SSL profile to be able to do that. If you don't want to look at the traffic at all, you just want to load balance it, well, then you don't need those profiles, and you can just leave it as a TCP protocol and let it go about its merry day. But you're not going to be able to do other things like attach an HTTP profile, because if you have not offloaded that SSL, it doesn't understand that the payload is HTTP. And so those are some of the nuances that I wanted to bring up with this question. Thank you, Dran, for asking the question. Boneyard, one of our MVPs, thank you for weighing in on that and helping him out. All right, export existing config to AS3 declaration. I say this one last before we get out of here. The requirement is he wants to be able to export his big IP configurations so he can take advantage of AS3 in existing deployments. And that's kind of the big thing. If you're greenfield and you're starting into big IP deployments, it's great to start with AS3. But if you already have configs out there, how do you go from A to B? And so the answers in there is like, me too. I want to play. And one person bumped a repo from John Allen, and he's done a lot of scripting, a lot of stuff out in the code share for him. So if you're looking for ideas on that side, you can go check out John's repo. My answer on that in the forum was stay tuned, because there is exciting news on that front coming up. If you joined us when we had Ben Gordon on for the VS Code talk, there might have been some hints dropped there as well. So if you didn't get to join us for that, go check out that that show, because that was an amazing display of some of the things that you can do, not just with automation, but also with iRules and all that from VS Code. VS Code's got a tremendous plugin ecosystem, and with the F5 tools that are there, really makes it easy to do some things. But on that front, stay tuned on this, because we might have some exciting news in the coming weeks for that. Daniel, you were wondering if you could do that with Big IP. Do which one? Let me know. Sorry, I missed your question when it came in, but if you could do what with Big IP, let me know, and I'll answer your question, or Big IQ rather, or I'll get your answer, because I may not know the answer. All right, and then that's the show notes that I had. And we're right up at about time. I did want to talk again about what we have coming up next week. Lori McVitie and Cindy Borovic are going to be here, and that's going to be an amazing show. Security Sidebar on the 18th with John, and then we're going to both be back on the 25th for the Zero Trust discussion with Corey and Brian. So don't forget to save the date for Agility, the 20th through the 22nd of April. That is labs included. Thank you, Leaf, on that. This AS3, can you do? Yeah, absolutely. You can do AS3 with Big IQ, and there are guides for that. I will see if I can find like a getting started on the Big IQ side, and I'll drop those in the show notes as well. Thanks for the question, Daniel. All right. Well, we are up. It's another great week of DevCentral Connects. This week it's you want answers, and hopefully the answers were sufficient and you feel satisfied. If not, just give me a thumbs down, and I'll do my best to improve for next time. Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure to join you in this community. Reach out on DevCentral, shoot me an email, catch me on Twitter, and we'll see you out there in the community. Thanks.